Well, welcome back to Wannabes. We're excited to be back in action here after a hiatus of a few months. We have set up a new Spotify and got all of our old episodes on there, and we got our Facebook back active again. And we're trying a new software that's going to give us some new abilities to do some cool stuff with our video and get us on maybe TikTok, Instagram. So we're trying to grow this thing. We're blessed to be back here today. We got Zac Cole with us, who's going to be sitting in on the conversation and contributing and helping keep us on track probably a little bit here. And so welcome back. Listeners, welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
Definitely. We have a plan today of kind of some conversation starters that might be interesting to you as you're listening and thought-provoking stuff. I came across, I really don't know how I came across it. The website was called famguardian.org. And it's just it's one page website. There's no other buttons on it, but it has 72 Christian one-liners. And that's all that's on the whole website that I could see. But shout out to them for this, because it's been really good. Now, some of these we'll mention, we're going to go through and just pull out some and talk casually about it. Some are kind of light-hearted, kind of church sign cheesy, but some are pretty deep, and there's some thought there. I don't know if you wanted to pull some of those out. Which ones stood out to you?
And there's always, if you've got a bunch of preachers sitting around, they probably wish we sometimes would preach one-liners. You got a plethora of one-liners. It went on.
I got the bone now. Got that bone now.
With plethora. But I thought it's so interesting when you guys said, let's do just kind of a lighthearted little church one-liners. Now, this would get really pointed probably. Some people are kind, polite, and sweet-spirited until you try to sit in their pews.
Or padded chairs, depending on what you're...
Was that a funny one or a serious one?
That one kind of seems like there's some vindication behind that.
Oh, yeah. It's
flavored. A little tongue-in-cheek. But yeah, I don't know. Have you guys experienced that? Because I have.
Yeah.
That person who's in here all the time and real sweet.
I was sitting in a pew and had a member come up, not where I'm preaching now, but years ago, and said, "Excuse me, you're in my seat." And I just looked up at her.
Yeah.
And she said, "You're in my seat." I said, "Oh, you really want me to get up and move and go find another seat?"
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, it is my seat."
My word.
And I said, "Okay." So I got up and went and found another seat. And so it does happen.
Yeah. And if you walk up and you see in that chair, there's a knitted blanket, a pair of reading glasses, and a seat cushion, you stay away from that seat.
It's essentially a church member's way of peeing on the tree.
Yeah.
Marking my territory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not marking it.
I don't know how. Well, really, that I think in a really simple way exemplifies why people have problems with church in general.
Yeah.
Don't come to church because of junk like that. Because that is pretty common. I feel like we can hit the big stuff, be real. We'd have a lot of philanthropy and be real giving, and then we miss that. You're just what are you doing? Because that's the thing they're going to remember.
Oh, yeah.
Is you asked me to get up from a... I mean, that's what I remember doing in middle school.
Yeah.
So that's like some middle school, junior high stuff.
Yeah.
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 But I don't think that ever leaves us.
No. Yeah.
People, I think we all have our things. I mean, it doesn't have to be that. It could be, someone gets put in some kind of a leadership role, not even like an elder.
Well, and there's many times when I go to places now, I will wait and be the last one to sit. Many times I'll try to be the last one to eat, because if you sit in somebody's seat, that's going to get real personal.
Yeah.
And if it's potluck and all the food is gone, then somebody's going to be upset. So I'm I'm just going to sit back and I'm going to wait for that seat.
I'll grab the last deviled egg. I've got no shame. I get one chicken tender and one deviled egg usually. I get that. I had
in the last one. They get offended super easily nowadays, and and I don't really.
But does that tie into the one-liner there, that number 5? The good Lord didn't create anything without a purpose, but mosquitoes come close.
Does it tie in?
How does it tie in?
I'm waiting on that.
Person that's giving you that difficult time is the test that you need.
They're your mosquito. Yeah.
Which one is a mosquito in this scenario? The person sitting in the chair unwittingly, or the person kicking them out?
Yeah, they come in and swat you like a mosquito when you're in their seat. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think the real deep undercurrent of that is, do we put on?
Yeah.
Do we put on a face that we feel like we need to put on, and we fail whenever push comes to shove, in the tiny imperceptible moments like that happen day to day. Because I feel like that's when you know, like, if you're going to call yourself a Christian and you know someone, well, they're living it. The moments like that you notice when they don't do that,
Yeah.
when they show grace with something small, if they break some social barrier, so something like that, that's when you can actually affect change.
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't have to be our church, but any religious organization out there, I feel like, is so big on doing the big stuff, hosting the big thing or whatever. And I mean, I'm sure those get people, but the things that really get people is the relational, the small stuff.
Very much so.
Yeah. And if you fail on that, it doesn't matter how much. You have to be good on that minimum before the big stuff can even mean anything. If you're doing the big stuff and not doing the small stuff, then you're wasting a lot of money, a lot of time.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's real interesting to me as the preacher or speaker. I get up every Sunday, and everybody has their spot where they sit. Well, one day I made a comment, and Marcel's just a wonderful body. I mean, just a wonderful group of people. And Bologna is as well. And there was one time I was saying something about moving seats. And so some of the members started moving and sitting in different places in the building. Oh. And it was so strange because I'd be preaching and maybe I was going to make a point or something. And I'm used to seeing people sit in different places. I don't know where to look.
Are they not here today? I know it's
Are you not here? I wouldn't say that, but in my mind, I said, they're not here.
Yeah.
Oh, they're there.
Yeah.
It's almost like, you take a role without knowing that you're taking a role, like a teacher in a classroom, by looking in certain areas. So it challenges you, even if you're comfortable with it. It's just we're not used to it. So it's.
Y'all got one?
I know, Zach. Come with you. I was going to mention this one, number 10, right?
Yeah. Quit griping about your church. If it was perfect, you couldn't belong.
I like that one a lot.
Yeah. I think that should hit people a little bit, and I think that's the message that we need to be more clear on, is that I think we try to be clear on sometimes, but again, I think we say it, but we don't do it. We still try to be perfect.
Yeah. We know it's the thing to say, but it's hard to live up to that.
Right. We'll simultaneously say, well, we're not perfect. We're supposed to do this or that. And then, like, all the while when people ask us how we're feeling when we come in, we never talk about the imperfect. So all they're hearing this one thing, but then you're portraying perfection constantly in here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes messages.
Yes, I think the lack of vulnerability is something that I don't know when that became a thing, but I do think it dampers quite a bit. And people think that they're not good enough to be in the church, and they're right. No one is.
Yeah,
that's the point. None of us are good enough to deserve or be or whatever, but Jesus was. If we were good enough, we wouldn't have needed it to begin with. I think we need to do better about not just saying that. I'm not saying don't stop saying it, but whether it's through things like social media, and we've talked about this in class, all people post is perfection. Post some of the imperfection too. I don't really know all the best tangible ways to balance it out, but there has to be something. Talk about your struggles. Some of that just comes with I think getting closer to people in the church. But I mean, if visitors come in and all they see is the perfection and how good everything's going, then they feel.
Well, there was a young man that I baptized. I don't know how long it's been, a few months now. And we were just talking one day, and he was like, I've really never been around a preacher that would just share the things that he struggles with. Mm-hmm. Like, you had things in common with me, like you would share it. And I don't know if it's because growing up in that world where sometimes you don't want to share your weaknesses. You don't want to have to confess a lot because people are going to be judging you, looking at you. Like I was preaching one time and I talked about having taken my first drink when I was in college at Arkansas Tech. That's the first time I had. And she came up afterwards, this older lady, said, Keith, I don't think it's very wise to talk about, the times that you drank because you might have an alcoholic in here. And it really...
Wait, what? Yeah. You're like, what?
I have to share that I'm perfect. I said, that's the reason that it was hard for me to be a preacher's kid, because I was constantly having to be perfect. And I think some people walk away maybe from the faith because I think they have to be perfect.
And you can't be perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you watch just like a movie, and there's some kind of religious or preacher or priestly, whatever involved, they're either perfect or satirical, and they're as evil as you can get. Like, there's never this like just your everyday's guy that, which is what preacher, what anybody is, But if you're a preacher or a priest, you're like holier than thou.
Yeah,
you are you're the spitting image of perfection, and that's kind of that puts an unfair burden on you guys, in particular. But it also just I feel like, I don't know, people can almost project things onto the preacher. If you go in and the preacher's perfect and everything, and then you feel like you're as like a byproduct of being attached to that person going to also be perfect. So if you reveal your imperfection, somehow it's bleeding onto them.
What movie is this? A random movie to think about a preacher, but I think it was Signs, the Signs movie with Mel Gibson's a preacher.
Oh, I love it.
I actually kind of like his portrayal of what it means to be a preacher. I mean, his wife gets killed by a car, and so like it makes him very vulnerable. But he's also just this guy in the community that struggles, but people still call on him and need him. But also he's very open with, "I'm grouchy today," or I need help too. And it was kind of a cool perspective to rewatch that with the preacher in mind, because that's his role, and so that was cool. But it's kind of it was refreshing, even though it has nothing to do with.
But I don't even know if that might go along with number 12 there. If the church wants a better preacher, it only needs to pray for the one it has.
Yeah, that's really good. If I just did that.
Maybe. And that goes to, there was another one there, like number 53 is on the back page there. The church is prayer conditioned.
That one's good.
Prayer conditioned.
I didn't realize what it was saying until you read it that way earlier. Because reading it, I'm like, that's okay. But then you said prayer, like you did the prayer, like instead of air conditioning, then air
conditioning.
Prayer. Oh, see, that's right. I wasn't getting it. Yeah. You have to know how to emphasize. That guy, I'm a little slow. Maybe I'm really slow, but there was one, it's like number 27 on the sheet, and it says, "Don't wait for 6 strong men to take you to church." And I was sitting there reading, and I was like, what Bible story has 6? It sounded like a VBS story. Like, where are the 6 strong men in the Bible? And keep you Spencer, it's a dead person being brought in a casket. Like, oh, that's awesome. I mean, it's not awesome, but the point got a little more real.
Yeah.
But don't wait until your funeral to let that be the time you get engaged with the church.
Yes. Don't wait for 6 strong men to take you to church.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you think we have a problem? We just don't have to be our church in particular, but with getting young people to be independent and make their faith their own and not their parents. I think that's at least a piece.
Yeah. It's like a failure to launch when you go and everybody has to face some point. Because it's not college for everybody, and for fewer and fewer, it's becoming colleges that time. It used to be in youth ministry. You'd say when they go off to college, that's when we'll see if they'll find a church they plug into and if it'll be a sticky faith that grows into their own. But now it's just life is going to hit at some point. A lot of times I think it's even in school, like early, sometimes elementary school, but definitely by middle school, high school, they have to practice then making their faith their own, even though they're still coattailing off of your faith because you're driving them to church and they live under your roof and you're still modeling. They also still have to be making some decisions on their own, or it's going to predetermine that later college year stuff. And we've waited too long to worry about it. And so by the time, and I think that's where we've fallen as short historically as a church, but people are aware of it now, as it needs to start as kids, with families bringing their kids here and modeling that. I mean, to some degree, Lucas is already making his faith his own before he even really knows what faith is.
Yeah. And, so like, there's always that balance of, which I don't know, and Keith's already gone through this, and I mean, but having teenagers and whenever they start getting more independent, like what's the balance of, because making your faith your own, I feel like it implies messing up, and learning how to deal with that, right? Like, what's the balance in y'all's opinion of messing up, letting your kids mess up, but not letting them go too far? The classic example being like a party. We don't have to go that route, but just like, what do you guys think is the balance of allowing them some flexibility for them to,
like, they can't live in the bubble,
right? For them to not live in the bubble, so when they get out in college, they're not just, they're off the nutrition of their parents' faith, and now they're totally alone.
Well, it can even tie into what we were talking about. A lot of times parents fail to make it known to their kids that they're still sinners and imperfect too. If they think their parents are perfect, well, that's not going to happen in their lives. So then they think they're not able to be a Christian parents need to tell their kids the mistakes they made and, don't go to that party. Our family didn't do that. But you can also say, there was a time I went to that, or there's a time I did something like that and I didn't tell my parents. Let me just tell you, it didn't work out the way I wanted it to. I mean, it's okay. Sometimes if you put it in such a way that it's unacceptable in this family or in this church to sin, then what happens when you're going to sin,
Right.
And so you need to know that when you sin, there's forgiveness. And also you're going to have to figure that out, like we're going to forgive you, but you need to know more importantly that God's going to forgive you. Don't run away from the church when you make mistakes, run to the church.
I don't remember, Keith, if it was you or your brother. It was one of you two, because you're both loud preachers.
Jason?
Now, but the analogy, it was, I think, in one of our Wednesday night series, the analogy given was in regards to comparing parenting to coaching. Was the analogy being given? To remember all the steps for a while, so I'm not going to try to articulate all of them, but I do remember at one point, you or him, whoever it was, they said, at a certain point, you've got to let them play the game. And I remember the last two stages. The fourth stage was you can be friends with your kid once they're out of the house.
Yeah.
They're out of the house. They're not under your guardianship anymore.
That's probably you.
And he can be friends.
Yeah.
And then that third phase was okay, you've trained them. You've done the off-season training. You've done the lifting. You've done the practices. But you've got to let them go onto that football field and compete and then come back to the sideline to almost like you're sending them out and back. If you keep them on the sideline for the whole time and never let them go compete, then how are we going to watch film later and review and all that stuff? So I guess that's the thought, like the analogy.
Yeah, that's fine.
I've always held on to that, that's a really cool way to look at.
Yeah, and as a parent, even I coached my boys, and so I was their coach, I was their teacher, I was their preacher. I played a lot of roles, and sometimes when I was talking to my boys, I say, "Okay, listen, I'm talking to you as a coach right now. You will be at practice, you will do these things, you will do it. You're team oriented." But then sometimes I would have to say, "All right, I'm talking to you as a parent now. Hey, your coach is human too, and you've got a life outside of that." And what I have learned is the dad really has to know his values and his morals and what he's standing for. That we're not just taking them to church so they can go to Bible class and that's the only Bible that they're going to get. It has to be played out. Coaches are involved. Coaches are there. Coaches are at the practice. Coaches are watching the film. Coaches are involved in every aspect of it. And you see a lot of dads out there throwing balls with their kids. Dads are out there taking their kids to the ball game. They're out there cheering. They're invested in it. They're upset when this happens and happy when that happens. But sometimes they go to church and they're sitting on the back pew. They're there, but they're not there.
Yeah.
And that makes a big difference. And I think kids know that. So when you say you can't go to that party, if you've grown that expectation their entire life and you're not going to the party, I mean, church is, you've created an environment that the kids like to be a part of. They've bought into it, then they won't do that.
Yeah.
When I was younger, my coach went little elementary baseball. It didn't even matter. But they said, you can't go swimming the day you play a ball game. Well, I took that. I can't go swimming. I can't go swimming, because I got to go play. They buy into what's valuable to them.
Yeah.
And if we don't create that buy-in to the body of Christ, then I've got to go find meaning somewhere.
Yeah. Right.
And so I think it's a lifelong journey to start playing the game.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into it. And many times both parents are working. They're just gone. They see their kids a few hours a day, and it's a struggle.
Yeah. Right. And that kind of, I think, begs the question of, is church or being a Christian, however you want to phrase it, is that who you are, or is that what you do?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a physical therapist. I don't have any desire. And whenever I interviewed for that job, that was the first thing I told Tommy is, I want to be a good Christian. I want to be a good husband. One day I want to be a good dad. It's like PT is not even in my top 5 of priorities. And I want you to know that before going into it.
Yeah.
That's part of why I'm blessed to be there. He's like that. He's the same way.
Same way.
That's why the culture we have is so good up there. But that shameless thing aside.
Yeah.
But I do think that, that's part of talking about people just going to show up. Like, church is not just going to happen to your kid just because you're Sunday.
They can see real quick what you value. You're going to get good grades. You can fix and get up and go to school. No, you can fix and get a job. This church, is it on the same plane? And I did the very same thing that you did when I was coaching. There was one season and it was not very satisfying for me. It hurt me, which affected my family. And I can remember the head coach even coming and talking to me. Said, why are you getting out of this? Now I'm not going to have a coach to fill this history teach because you're teaching history. I said, Coach, I don't care. So I'm a Christian and I'm a husband. I'm a dad. And whatever puts money on the plate to help these, I'll do. If it's coaching, I pray that I use it for God's glory. But if it's digging ditches, I'm going to dig ditches and try to make an impact. But I want my family to know that these are the values that I'm living. And a lot of times when they see that, man, we went serious all of a sudden, did we? Like,
Well, these are the right. Yeah.
Well, we did. Yeah, and I don't know. I really appreciate that line of thought because, I mean, don't you guys I do think that order is so very important. God first, spouse second, kids third.
Mhm.
I feel like if you mix any of those up at all, it becomes really bad really fast.
yes.
I mean, right? Like, have we not seen people who like kids are definitely,
Yes.
they're right at the top,
Yeah.
which I think there's some misplaced, well-meaning. Like, I don't think people do it. They don't do it maliciously.
No, they love their kid. Like
They're probably neglected to an extent as a kid, and that's why my kid's never going to feel that way. I'm like, okay, well,
they need to feel some of that.
If you treated Jesus the same way that you're treating your child, you might have a different outcome.
yeah,
Well, some of those things, when they're mixed up, to try to unmix it and reprioritize, it causes damage before it becomes a good, like if your kid is used to being number one in your life, and then you at some point in your life, which is great, say, we've had this out of order, God has to come first before all this. It'll be a painful time for them because they're not ready to make that decision you just made for them as a parent. And you have to really be diligent and intentional. You can't just say God's first now and then not put any effort to solidify that. And I said one of these one-liners that go number 17, some lines are like concrete. They're thoroughly mixed up and permanently set. Concrete, when it's, I don't know if coagulated is the word. I just wanted to say that because it sounded smart, right?
I think you're accurate. Yes.
You don't just take concrete apart. It is mixed up and it sits that way. And so it's hard when even if you've done the wrong things for the right reasons, meaning making your kids above God, you've done the wrong things for the right reasons, you have to unmix that. And so sometimes you just have to break the concrete up and start over.
Yeah.
You can't unmix
And
things.
on that analogy, when you break a concrete up, what does it normally have to be? It's like a jackhammer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't come apart the same way
Yeah.
it went together. It is fractured.
Now you won't regret doing it, but yeah, fracture. That's a good fractures involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
But nothing God can't fix. That's where the faith comes in. Like, God, if I'm going to undo all this, I'm going to need your help to repair these relationships, this worry, this fear. If I have to quit a job, if I have to do this and have this conversation with my kids, if we have to move to this town. Well, that's what faith is all about. And if you can't trust God in those moments, then there's no point in jackhammering. You're just screwing your life up for no reason. And so don't mess your life up for no reason. But if you're going to mess your life up, let God fix it because he will. So
Yeah.
you have to get to that point of faith.
Yes.
Hard.
Brag on my my father-in-law a little bit, Jeff, for this. Morgan, I talk about this a lot, but one of the biggest things for me, because I wasn't raised up in the church. I was raised going to church, but I wasn't raised up in the church. It was just kind of something we, did. But Morgan, she was very involved in tournament softball. That's a whole nother thing I have to deal with just on our end of physical therapy and stuff. These kids who sports is life. It is literally their entire life, and their parents and then don't know anything other than the athlete.
Yeah.
Right. And Morgan was in a situation where she's in softball, and it could have easily turned into their story, but it wasn't. And one of the things that they did, and we're talking about the order of things, is they were very good. So they're playing into the 3 or 4 a.m. championships quite often. Never miss church. No matter how tired they were, and that's not necessarily to, to their own horn, but it's just, I think there's not a more clear way to show your priority than the actions you do and what you show up for.
Yeah.
People who don't come in to the building because they have a headache, or they're not feeling well, or whatever else. Okay, well, would you have shown up to work?
Yeah.
When you need to get paid. If the answer is yes, there's a problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the only way to fix a problem is to recognize it exists, but that's the tough part that I don't have to deal with it. I don't have kids, but so I'm assuming as soon as the losing sleep becomes a real thing with having children and stuff, that becomes put to the test really quick. Okay, how valuable or how much value do you place on showing up, not just for yourself, but for everyone?
But you not having kids is the perfect time
to practice.
to start practicing that, because even as a coach where I was, and I was trying to be a good Christian, but I'd failed. I was faithful and I was serving, and even the other coaches knew that I was a Christian. And it was so interesting to me. I thought that they were out having fun and enjoyed that life, and they didn't want anything to do with church. So to my shame, I probably didn't evangelize the way that I could have. And when they started having kids, they said, "Hey, Keith, hey, man, I might need to get my family in church. Hey, I need to." And after a while, I began to think, no, you need to get in church. You need to become a believer. You need to accept that. You need to buy into it. Because if you do that, you'll get your family. But I think too many times we just think, I got to start taking them to church. If you haven't developed those habits, you haven't developed that sacrifice, if you haven't determined. The other night we had Bible class and we were talking to some of the young adults, and I said, young adults today work all the time. They're just busy. And we were talking about faith. And one of the passages said, whatever you ask in my name, it'll be given to you. I said, have you ever thought to ask for a job that may allow you to make worship, to have time to spend with your children in devos or Bible study or prayer? That many times, and even some of the young adult men were like, we get comfortable in our job, and even though it takes us away, you're ready to get that raise, and you're growing because man's created to.
Well, whenever before I got into PT school and even through it, I was a tech for College Regional for 7 years, and that job was a weekend job. When I first took it, I was 18, and so most 2 weekends out of every month for 7 years, I was working Saturday and Sunday mornings for College Regional. So I missed Sunday morning service twice. Now, I never missed Sunday night when I did, so I tried to always pat myself on the back there. I don't know if that was a good or a bad thing, but getting out of school and getting the job at Valonia, they called me after I'd already gotten it and offered me so I could have worked the Valonia job and a weekend job now as a therapist, which pays good money. And they were offering same Saturday, Sunday, twice it probably wouldn't have been asked for it, but I would have missed 10 to 12 Sundays a year. And this thing we're talking about is why I declined that. I've done that, and I always felt more empty the days I didn't go. And I feel like that was a way that the Lord, I don't know if we call it a test, but I was like, this is one of those foot in the door type things. If I do that, when does it stop? I can stop it right now, and just like some days are mine for the Lord, and it's really not that big of a request. So, come to church 3 times typically, Sunday morning, Sunday evening. Wednesday evening, it's 3 hours. Now for us, and talk a lot, 6 hours. Every week. But it's like, is that an appointment that you're not willing to miss, or is that something that you'll do if life kind of fits, if it's around it? And I think that really begs the question, like, are you as a Christian who you are, or what you do? I think that's revealed through actions like that, which is, my wife and I were trying to build a good culture around that overall. But I do think the Lord places little moments like that, like what?
So in our society, we talk about going to church, not being the church.
Yeah.
That if you are the church, you're the church wherever you're at. You don't just.
But you're going to go. Like, you can't be the church and not.
But if you're the church, then you're going to gather together.
Yeah, that's just one aspect of being.
I mean, you're going to be there. And I think sometimes we could be flexible as a church or the body of Christ to help. Maybe that time that we always set forth is not the best suited time for, for everyone. We can be flexible.
And that could mean, like, you don't stay up all night Saturday night. If you're the kind of person, if you stay up late, you cannot function. You don't stay up late the night before church. I feel like that's not that complicated, but people like to make it, I stayed out. Why would you not? It's there the same time every week. So is that the kind of culture you create in your house? I remember that being a thing at the Grays or whatever. I don't know. We're going to bed, early Saturday night, or not early, but
didn't you try that excuse on Morgan one time and she dropped?
So if you don't know, and if you know my wife, I had to push her pretty far for her to ever even say this, but she told me one day I was too tired to go to church in high school, and she told me, I'm really glad you just weren't too tired to die for your sins. And I was like,
that was one liner. That was one liner.
The amount of anger I had when she said that, and that quickly,
but no reply.
State that one again. That may be the best one liner we've had.
I'm really glad Jesus wasn't too tired to die for your sins.
Yeah.
Wow. My wife is
Well,
wife.
you knew what you were married,
I
dude.
did. I did. I got into it. But the thing is that was effective because of who she was.
Yeah.
If she was one of these
That's
people
right.
that showed up 70% of the time when
You're
it's
right.
convenient,
Can't see that.
it wouldn't have been an effective hit. But
Yeah.
but that one,
Yeah.
I had known her for years at that point.
Yeah.
I text her and I would call her crazy for staying up till 3
Yeah.
and then going to church the next day.
Yeah.
And she would just say, "That's who I am. That's who we are." So yeah, that. Now I'm the kind of personality, and she knew this, that's effective for me. Now some people,
Yeah.
say that under no circumstances is that a good thing to say, but for me in particular, that was a challenge.
But sometimes, like I was speaking with some young adults the other day, and I asked them, I said, do you think God knows your heart better than you do? And they said, well, of course, if I'm going to believe in God, I'm going to believe that he knows my heart. Then he knows that your desire is to be a certain way, and he's fixing to do the things that it takes, bring them into your life to get you to that point that you never thought you wanted to be. So there's a lot of people who might have been unfaithful for many years, but their heart's desire, what they've been looking for, was the body of Christ. They just didn't know it yet, but they're seeking that. And so I'd have older ladies that would say, it was just luck that I happened to run into the man that I married, and we spent 70 years together. And I said, was it luck? Or I think it was one of those. Did y'all see that one? There's one, number 24 on here. Incidents is when God chooses to remain.
I like that.
Hey, this is in that movie sign you're talking about also.
Yeah.
The priest, he's having a challenge of faith. And they're having a conversation the night before it all goes down. And he asked the question, is it possible that there are no coincidences?
I forgot about that. Yeah.
And that's always been a super poignant, line in a film,
Wow.
And
Of course you would remember those signs. Yeah.
there's a movie a million times. That's a whole other thing. But the precedent to that, which this is a stupid story, but if you haven't seen this movie, go watch it.
So good.
It's a good faith movie too. But the character is not played by Mel Gibson, who plays it.
Is it
Joaquin Phoenix. Yeah, he's telling the story about being at a party in high school. And he's about to kiss this really pretty girl, wants to kiss him. And right before he kisses her, he realizes he's got gum in his mouth. So he spits it out and turns back around, and that girl throws up everywhere because she had been drunk. And he said, if I hadn't have spit that gum out, she would have thrown up. It traumatized me. So he was using that to say, like, it was a miracle. That was his miracle story, miracle story.
Yeah.
Mel Gibson turned around and, like, that was the whole question. Yeah. Was that a miracle? Was that happenstance? Or obviously, is God intervening and to not let you get peeped on? Like, that's a whole nother thing. But is it possible? I always thought it was is it possible there are no coincidences? Is it that's something to be considered?
Yeah. You maybe go watch that movie. That's a heavy movie.
Oh, it's good.
Might go watch that.
So good.
Yeah. Some more one-liners. Even the last one, number 72, man's way, I thought this was cool. Man's way leads to a hopeless end. God's way leads to an endless hope.
Yeah, I got to read that a couple times.
Oh, that was pretty cool.
That might be on our church side of the
Man's
sign.
way leads to a hopeless end.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're hoping in everything you're striving to get in this world, but God's way leads to an endless hope.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that was a good one. And then going on number 68, going along with what we've been talking about on, being faithful, give Satan an inch and he'll be a ruler. And
really didn't go the way you went.
it's ruler.
Well, wait. It's like that Saturday Night Live. How many centimeters are in a? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
But I mean, I agree. I don't. The question is, how do you not let him take an inch?
Yeah.
That's the.
Well, he's going to at times. How do you give the full ruler back to God? How do you make God the ruler when you've already lost an inch? And it's a constant act.
Yeah. I mean, like Philippians 4:19 is, don't be angry. Don't give the devil a foothold.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't give him an opportunity. But
I mean, I think that begs the question, like, what in our lives do we justify that we do?
Yeah.
Or say or think that we probably shouldn't be, but because we think that we're good and now these other categories that justifies. I think that's where really Satan can get at someone who's pretty adamant about going to the church and being involved and stuff, is he makes you He lets you believe that you're good enough. And whenever we lose sight of the fact that we're not good enough and that it's only Christ that's good, I think that's where the danger comes in of, okay, if you think you're good enough, then you're inevitably going to start justifying some things that you're either watching or thinking about or whatever else because, well, I do my tasks, my boxes. I go to church 3 times a week. I'm charitable and I witness to people and okay, that's great, but that doesn't, do you let Satan get an inch because you're
What are you holding back? It's not about what you're giving; it's what you're holding back.
right, and that's hard. I think sometimes
We all are tempted to hold things back in our life from God.
One I liked, if we want to go to these other two, 38. We don't change the message changes the message.
I double starred that one.
Yeah. How often do we think we deal with the first part of this,
with all the things the church has to give an answer to in today's world.
Of the message, we don't have to get, too in depth there, but
we don't. It was what we're talking about in the church today, more than any other time in the church's history, even in Acts. I mean, with all the media and with all the issues, the church is always having to make a response for something that's being pushed. And so every church has to give a response. So there are different responses out there. And so then people are trying to pick a church that matches up with their family's response. And with all these responses, churches are inevitably made up of people. And so we're going to try to change the message to compromise that. And how do you know if a church, because some people, if I go here, I want to know what your response is going to be on things like that. And that shouldn't really be how we approach the church. It's the people, are they bought into the message where they're not going to compromise anything? So I don't even have to give a response. Like, that's where I'm at. I do not have to respond to everything the world asks of the church because the message is the message. And it wasn't made to stoop down to every little level that we try to change it. It just, that do struggle with.
Well, and that's one, like you had shared that before we got on the podcast. I mean, sometimes our best discussions are pre-podcast. But like number 19, I don't know why some people change churches.
Oh,
what difference does it make which one you stay home from?
So good, so bad, so true.
And so it's like,
in a ministerial sense, like you'll see if you've been at different congregations or if you've just been at one place long enough to see growth and decline and inevitable things. Every once in a while, there'll be people that stop in. Hey, I'm from so-and-so. We moved here or we go here usually, but we don't like this. And so we're visiting here to see. And sometimes they'll even say, we want to place membership here. We have visited here. We didn't find this and ever. And then that's the last time you'll see them for months. And you're like, what was your point in moving your family? Why did you uproot your kids? Why did you move? Because you didn't have any intention of really doing anything.
Well, and we growing up in Arkansas, I think it's like we live in a bubble. We call it the Bible Belt. And we went on vacation this past year, went up to Maine. So I went and worshiped at Maine. There was about 15, 20 people showed up. Some of them were visitors. So probably only about 5 to 10, hardcore Christians that worship there. And I was like, is there a difference? Because I said, if we don't like the group that we're with, we'll just drive 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes down the road, and we've got another group, another congregation that we could work with and we could worship with. And if we don't like that, we can go to another one. But here, I'm driving down the road and I only see one, and the other ones are like an hour or so away. And they said, you learn to love each other, learn to sometimes agree to disagree, but, really go into God's word to find out what is a faith matter. And so it kind of struck me odd, because I said, I wondered that. Is it easier to evangelize in Arkansas to talk about Jesus? Or has it just become Jesus now? Like there's so many choices that you just get.
I do think people are just wary of things that seem fake. But I'm about 3 steps ahead of where I need to start here. A thought I have regarding this is church not church as a concept, not necessarily as the biblical form, but as society has kind of interpreted it to like the church building is become more of a social club. More than anything, or at least that's how your average lay person who's not a religious person would view it, is really as a social club. And it's not necessarily safe from, like, I'm a big free market guy, it's not safe from capitalism to an extent where if it's looked at as a social club, it's going to start getting treated as a social club, meaning if you want someone to buy a product of yours, I mean, you run a business, you have to make it more attractive than the other products. So you have to cater to your audience, and that, I think, in essence, is what has happened to a lot of churches. They're not looking they want to, they'll say they want to deliver the message. And I think it's not malicious in nature, but it's turned into, how do we make this as attractive as possible? And the problem with that is society changes every 10 to 20 years. You're going to have a shift. So for you to keep your numbers up, especially if we pay preachers and we have a giant building and we want all these things, you need money. And to get the money, you got to have the members. And to have the members, you've got to get more people. And if you just preach God's message, maybe 1% of the world is going to really hardcore buy into it. Maybe I'm being pessimistic, but you're not going to get the numbers you need. Yeah. You have to change the message to keep up with the Joneses in a sense, and the more attractive the building is, the more stuff you can offer, the more people will come, and you think, I'm doing a good thing because I'm getting more members and we're spreading the word. And the question becomes, are you spreading the word?
Yeah.
Or have you created a different thing? Because I think what's happened is a lot of these churches, they're not church. They're a social club with a facade on top. And I think there's a subset of people who see right through it, which is kind of where I was, as a high schooler, like a lot of that, like, what are we doing here?
Yes.
Patting each other on the back, saying we're good people. We listen to some done up guy who, we just talked about that a while ago, portrays himself to be perfect. And we all, handshake and leave, and we're better people now. Then we're going to go and do what we're going to do. Right. And so I don't really, that's what's hard is because, and I think the Lord knows that's hard, is if you change his message, you'll get more members. You will, because whatever message is more attractive at the time, you'll get more people in the building. Right. And you'll grow faster. And that just is on the outside perceives to be, well, they must be doing something right because they're getting more members. They're looks more fun, whatever else. And if you don't change the message, as the culture changed and shifts further and further away, which we've seen in politics and everything else over the past 10, 20 years, as it drifts further away, then really your church is going to drift too in terms of members. It just is. And I don't think that means that you're failing. I think there's things we can do to bring people in. But like the question becomes, what are you changing? Whenever you're trying to bring people in, because it's scriptural things? Because if it is, then you're no different than big church down the street or whatever. Right? Yeah. But I do think there's a certain beauty to like our church right here at like Bologna in particular, where we built so many good relationships here with people, and people are starving that. And then that's why when they come, they don't leave. It's not because we don't have a whole lot of that stuff here. Nothing really. But I think my point is there doesn't have to be. People can find that anywhere. They can find the relationships. Yeah. They can.
Yeah. Priceless.
And that's where we've talked about, like with our 4th of July thing, we took out a lot of the fluff, whatever, to make it a little smaller, because I think whenever you have less fluff, the real gets exposed a little bit more. Yeah. And if it's good, real stuff, you're going to get more people than you are with some flashy fireworks and pop.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, like I'm preaching Sunday, and it's primarily find your why, to know the way. Know your why to find your way. We have to know why, like in Acts chapter 2, where you talk about the fellowship of new believers. Many times 42 through 47 is what the early Christians did. And I'm going to put out there, Acts 2, 47 through 42. And some people won't catch it. But verse 47 is, and the Lord added to their numbers daily, such as were being saved. That was the why. This is why we do what we do. And when that stops being the why, you won't get that same result. And so then you go to verse 46 and 45 and 43 and 42. And if we're doing those things, then verse 47 will be true. But just like you had said, sometimes when we look at our congregations today, it seems like the numbers are declining. So if the numbers are declining and not adding to the numbers, what are we doing to not get, verse 47?
We're in sync. I had the same idea in this past. I said 42 leads to 47, meaning we can look at that as, if we have 42 people, how do we get to 47? But if you look at Acts, if you're doing verse 42, it'll always lead to verse 47.
Yes.
I had the same thought.
Yes. So
that's what I think.
Sometimes we just go to verse 42 and they continue daily in the apostles' teaching and breaking, we just go to church and we're going to keep that apostles' teaching there. But when we don't follow the rest of the verses, we never get to
the math doesn't work.
Verse 47. It won't work. But if this is our why, then we'll start doing these other things, and it will naturally. God adds that. I don't have to go out and try to get a 200-member congregation. let's just take the ones that we've got and start doing these things.
Yep.
And God's fixing to add to the number such as are being saved.
Yeah. And I think that's like, if you look at like a number situation, like what are we not doing right? What made you assume that you're not doing something right? Because church is not like, well, like for our business in a PT realm, if we don't have patients being referred to or coming in, yeah, we're not doing something right. That is a business. That is not a, I don't know if you would put like church in a charitable or it's a different factor. It should be looked at differently, even from an economic perspective. But if more people are not coming in, that doesn't automatically mean that something is necessarily off with the messaging. And I think that's the failure, and especially when that probably becomes hard on you guys, because I mean, part of your livelihood is from the church. So that affects y'all to an extent too. But I'm sure that can be like a temptation of like, okay, what do we need to change? What to make more attractive or better, whatever.
Yeah.
You said you did. This is not a business, and it's not meant to be a business. And ultimately, that's the Lord's job. Is to get people saved and stuff. And our job is to preach that. And be His vessel for that.
Yes.
But people aren't coming in. That doesn't automatically mean, okay, well, we need to make it more attractive or slap a better sticker on it or whatever else, because then are you doing the Lord's will?
Yeah, and God needs to teach you that. I can remember when I was younger, it was probably more about the numbers, or it's about the message, the way that I preached, and I wanted people to really like that lesson. And while that's good, because some people might remember my sermons out at Camp Connell from 20 years ago. That's wonderful. But what did it do to your faith? I think God removed me from the ministry for several years because it was about me. It was about my ministry. It was about how good a lesson I could put together, this illustration. Now I come into the ministry. I do pretty much the same thing, the same way. I haven't changed.
Yeah.
But my why it's different. It's not about me. I really want you to be challenged with God's word. I really want you to be able to go to God's word. Let's find out really what matters. And I think it was more fluff back when I was younger. Today, I really want to help you. I really want to help you. And so God needed to transform me. God needed to work on me. And then I'm able to go out. And God needed to work on Zac. And it may have taken Morgan saying those short things to you that you begin to really examine really what the church is. And as we grow in that, I think we learn that.
Definitely.
It's been good to be.
I was going to mention one-liners are good and they're fun. And in 80s action movies, they actually change the course of the plot. But a lot of times you see one-liner on a church side, you drive by the building, you're like, oh man, not another one. But one-liner can have power if the person behind them is the man or woman of God they're called to be. It's not about what one-liner you drop to somebody. It's about your life lived out, like Zac was referencing earlier. And that's what I wanted this to be about. And as we're talking, the one-liners can be good. Some are funny, some are deep, but they don't mean anything without a person behind them that's wanting to be more like Christ. Don't want to have the right one-liner, want to just live in such a way that whatever you do say now serves as a one-liner because you said it.
Right.
Anything you say can be a one-liner if you're a godly person that people really see Jesus when they look at your life. It's not about the right words, it's about the life. And so find comfort in that.
I've got one more I'd like us to look at. 42.
Got
what's right, not what's left.
The leftovers.
I think that's the one that hit me the hardest. I was looking at all this.
I wrote cool beside it.
It is cool. But this is, again, that's back to my wife or whatever on this, but I do think this is one of those things that comes down to priorities. Are we, that's hard. And that's so hard. And even now, I just can relate to what I can relate to, which is my job and my life. I do know, like, in my field, like, so many people need poured into, which I like doing that. I feel like, the Lord has blessed me with a lot of social energy, which is good. But there are times that 6 or 7 people, I got something seriously wrong. I've had to, just talk to them or pray over them or whatever else. And I get home and there's not a lot left. And I don't even have kids yet. So, like, that's something I've been trying to be prayerful over and stuff too, is just trying to, that's why I think it's a good practice to speak with him first thing in the morning, because you haven't drank anything yet. You have more to give there in the morning. I think I don't remember who it was in one of our men's classes that was talking about communicating with him daily. Like all the prayer doesn't have to be some big flowery presence. It can just be like I have a new patient coming every 30 minutes usually. So in mine, it might be every 30 minutes. I'm like, Lord, please help me with this person. It doesn't be more complicated than that sometimes, just routinely communicating with them. But if you wait to the end of the day, sometimes there's nothing left. And then that becomes kind of the danger. And that's where like people don't come to the building. Sometimes there's nothing left. And that wasn't like a hardcore set thing that they're going to no matter what.
Yeah.
Something they're going to have something left. And life is life. You're probably not going to have anything left at the end of the day. Successful. At least.
You don't need to have anything left at the end of the day. I mean, really.
That is right.
But God will sustain you. I mean, that's where it is. The Holy Spirit gives you energy that physically you can't muster, but God can supernaturally bless you with those things. He really does that. He's a living God. And on days where you're like, I don't know how I'm going to make it through this. Well, the minute you start that conversation with God and trust him, it starts happening. He'll bless you. If your heart is where he needs your heart to be, that he knows better than you do.
Yep. He knows it.
So he can provide things that we,
I mean, that's where you can show him the most is when you're drained.
Yeah.
I think, because it's super easy.
It's wrong.
It's easy. It's easier to be a good Christian when I feel real good, I'm not feeling sickly or whatever. I'm caught up on sleep. I'm doing something I want to do. I'm around people I want to be around. That's easy.
Yeah.
It's the people that do it when it's not easy. Whenever, you're low on sleep, if you're doing something you don't want to do, maybe around people who irritate the fire out of you, like whenever you're showing God's love in those circumstances that's whenever I think it counts the most, and people don't have to know you're going through it.
Yeah.
Someone does know.
Always.
But yeah, I think that's something to consider.
Man, I think we got many more for like another.
Yeah.
We'll have to see.
Yeah. And if you want to look though, that's what's it called? It's called famguardian.org.
Guardian.com.
And I don't really know where I came across it. It's out there somewhere.
I'm
if you want to look those up, those are there, but
some of these are repeats too.
Some of them,
a lot of repeats.
Yeah. Some of that was really good. I can't believe I just had this idea for the first time.
Well, as we always, I feel more blessed.
Yes.
By being here.
We're glad to get these going again.
I want the listeners to be blessed
for joining us.
Yeah, I'm glad y'all.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Y'all have a blessed day and want to be more like Christ. And let's pray for each other. Let's pray over the ministries we're involved in. And we thank you for taking time to listen. And these will still be popping up on Facebook. And so even though it's not a live stream, you can still comment. So as you have thoughts, we still want that discussion to be there. So comment below that Facebook video that you're watching if that's how you're doing it, or YouTube, and let us know your thoughts. And we would love to bring that up in future discussions. Thank y'all. Have a good day.